Unpivoted data has column headers and row headers. It cannot be sorted, filtered, or even used for creating relationships in a data model. To do all that, it must be unpivoted, which is an important functionality in Power Query. I am Nabil Murad. In this tutorial, I show you how to unpivot data by using a single nested function that can be applied to any list or table and refreshes automatically when source data changes. So let's see how we do that in Excel. In this table, I have a month as column header. We have 12 months, and I have a region as row header, and I have 4 regions. At the intersection of each month and each region, I have an amount. This is a pivoted table. Each number represents the intersection of two conditions. In order to sort it, filter it, or create relationships in a data model, I need to unpivot it. So I end up by having a column for the region, a column for the month, and a column for the amount. I can unpivot this table by using Power Query. I go to the Data tab of the ribbon, and then I click on From Table Range to open the query editor. The query editor opens on top of Excel. I can change the table name. Instead of source, I'm going to name it Unpivoted. I hit enter, and now I select the region column, and I want to unpivot the 12 months. Then I right click on the region column, and I select Unpivot Other Columns. This is exactly what I want to do. I have the 4 regions, the east repeated 12 times corresponding to the 12th month, and then the west repeated 12 times, and so on. And then I have a column for the amount. I can rename the columns. So for the attribute, I'm going to rename it month, and for the value, I'm going to rename it amount. Data types are correct. Then I want to send my data back to Excel. On the Home tab, I click on the down arrow for Close and Load to. I want to put it in the existing worksheet. I select the existing. I select cell A9, and then I hit OK. This is the unpivoted result. A column for the region, a column for the month, and a column for the amount. If the numbers change in the source table, I need to refresh the query. But if I want to unpivot another table, then I have to repeat the steps over and over again. Now let's unpivot a list or a table by using a function. I go to the next worksheet. I already have the function in the Office clipboard. I'm going to paste it in cell A9, and then we explain it. I click in the formula bar, and I paste, and then I hit enter, and voila! I have the same exact result with a single function. Can I use this function on a list of a different size? Let's select another list. I click on list 2, where I have some student names and the score of each student in different subjects. I select cell K1, and I click in the formula bar, and I paste my function. All what I need to do is to replace the reference to the range. When I hit enter, I will have unpivoted this list. I have a column for the student name, a column for the subject, and the score. Now let's break down this function into multiple digestible parts and understand the concept. I go to the concept worksheet. I will break down the concept of this function into multiple parts, and I'm giving a label to each part. When I use the term A, then I'm referring to the entire list. A will be the source list. This is the only part that changes when I use this function on a different list. So the A variable, which refers to the source list, is the only part that will change. All other parts are referring internally to A. The variable B will extract the row header. And to do that, I'm going to use a take with a drop function. So if I type equal take, and then I hit tab, what do you want to take? I select the entire range. This is the array from which I want to take. This array will be replaced by the variable A, and then I type a comma. What's the row number? I want all the rows. Then I skip this argument by typing another comma, and then I want the first column, then I type 1. When I close the bracket, if I select this part, I will see that I'm extracting the leftmost column, the region. but I don't want the label, then I want to drop the label. Then I wrap my take function in a drop function. So I type drop and then I hit tab. What would you like to drop? I want to drop the top row. Then I click at the end, I type a comma, and I want to drop row number 1. I type 1, I close the bracket, and then I hit enter. And the variable b will be storing the region or the row header. What about the variable c? It will be extracting the column header. And for this one, I'll be using a drop with a take function. So I type equal take, and then I hit tab. From the variable a, which is the source list, I select the source list, and then I type a comma. I would like to take the top row, then I type 1, and I close the bracket for the take function. If I select the function and test, I'm extracting the top row. But I don't want the label in cell A1, region, month, and amount, so I'm going to drop it. So I wrap the take function in a drop function. I type drop, and what would you like to drop? I type a comma. I want to drop the first column, then I skip the rows argument, and I type a second comma 1, and when I close the bracket, I would have dropped the label in cell A1. If I test, I select the entire function, and now you can read in the tooltip, I'm extracting the month. But I'm extracting the month horizontally in a row. I want them in a column. Then I'm going to wrap these two functions in a transpose function. I type transpose, I close the bracket at the end. Where I hit enter, I would have extracted the column headers in a single column. The variable d will be storing all the amounts. It will be storing the numbers after excluding column 1 and row number 1. Let's do that. It's a simple drop function. I type equal drop, and then I hit tab. I'll be referring to the entire list, which is the variable a, and then I type comma. I want to drop row number 1, comma, and column number 1. When I close the bracket and hit enter, variable d will be storing the amount. The next step is to count how many values I have in variable b, and that's very simple. I type equal count a, and then I hit tab. I want to refer to variable b, but because this is a spilled array, I select the top cell, and I type the spilled array symbol Shift-3 on my keyboard. When I hit enter, it says you have 4 regions. In variable f, I would like to count how many values I have in variable c. I want to count the month, so I use another count a function, equal count a, and then I hit tab. I select the top value in the variable c, and then I type Shift-3 on my keyboard, the spilled array symbol. I close the bracket and hit enter, and I have 12 values in the variable c. The variable g will be returning the left column of the unpivoted data. Let's do that. And for this one, I'll be using an if with a sequence function. I type equal if, and then I hit tab. I type sequence, and then I hit tab. I want all the rows, then I type a comma. For the columns, I'll be typing 12, which is the number of values in the variable c that will be storing in a variable named f. So I'll be typing for now 12. And then I close the bracket for the sequence function. I type comma, the second argument of the if function. What do you want to do? I want the variable b, the regions. Then I select the top value and I type the spilled array symbol and I close the bracket. If I hit enter, this is what I'm getting. East is repeated 12 times corresponding to each month. West is repeated 12 times and so on. But I want them in one single column. Then I put my function in the edit mode and I wrap this function in a 2-column function. I click at the end. I type a comma. I want to ignore blanks and errors. I type another comma. And I want to scan by row, which is false. Then I type 0 and I close the bracket. When I hit enter, This is exactly what I want, and this is the left column of the unpivoted data. Let's extract the middle column of the unpivoted data with a similar function. I'll be typing equal to column, and then I hit tab, if, and then I hit tab, sequence, and then I hit tab. I type a comma, I want all the rows, and for the columns this time I need the variable E, which is the 4 values corresponding to the 4 regions. For now I'll be typing 4, but when I combine them I'll be referring to this number by using the variable E. I close the bracket and then I hit comma, that's the second argument of the if function. What do you want to do? I need the entire list of month, then I select the first one. I type a tilde array symbol and I close the bracket for the if function. When I type a comma, I'm back to the 2-column function. I type a comma, I want to ignore blanks and error. I type another comma, and this time I would like to scan by column. Then I'll be typing 1 and I close the bracket and I hit enter. That will be the second column of the unpivoted data. For each region, I will have 12 months. The next variable, which will be variable I, that will be converting all the numbers returned by the variable D into one single column. That's a simple 2-column function, equal to column, and then I hit tab. I select the first value corresponding to D, and I use the tilde array symbol. I close the bracket, and when I hit enter, that's the third column of the unpivoted data. The last function will be creating the column headers, because in cell A1 right now, I have the region, the month, and the amount. I want to create 3 headers for the 3 columns corresponding to the variables G, H, and I. And I'll be using a text split function to do that. I type equal text split, and then I hit tab. What would you like to split? I'm referring to my variable A, so I use a take function, take, and then I hit tab. From this entire source list, what would you like to take? I want to take the top row and the left column. Then I type comma 1, comma 1. I close the bracket, and then I type a comma. What's the delimiter? In double quotation, I type / space, double quotes. I close the bracket for the text split function. When I hit enter, these will be the labels of the unpivoted data. These are the different variables that I'll be combining all together in one single let function. So I want to delete everything and start over again in cell A9. I expand the formula bar, Ctrl-Shift-U, and I start creating a let function that will be combining all the functions I created, equal let, and then I hit tab. The first variable I want to create, I'll call it A, and then I type a comma, and A will be referring to the source list. So I select the source list from A1 to M5, I type a comma. To move to the next line, I hit Alt Enter, and my second variable will be called B, comma. B will be storing the row headers, and I create it by using a drop and a take function as I just explained. I close the bracket for the drop function. I type a comma, Alt Enter. I want to test my function, so I type B. I close the bracket for the let function. When I hit enter, I'm extracting the regions. Let's continue building the function. I delete the closing bracket, I delete the B, and I type the next variable C. I type a comma. C will be storing the column headers in one single column, and I need a transpose with a drop with a take function to do that. I refer to the source list by typing A and then comma 1 because I want the top row, and then I want to drop the left column. Then I type comma and another comma 1, and I close the bracket for the drop. I close the bracket for the transpose function. I type a comma, Alt Enter to move to the next row. My next variable will be variable D that will be storing the amount. So I type D, comma. I will take the source list, drop the top row and the left column. So I type drop the variable A. I want to drop the top row, so I type 1, comma, 1 for the left column. I close the bracket. I type a comma, Alt Enter to move to the next line. Now I would like to count how many value I have in the variable B, and I'll be storing it in a variable called E. I type E, that is equal to count A. What would you like to count? I want to count the variable B. I type a comma, Alt Enter. My next variable will be called F, and this will be counting how many values I have in the top row, and I use a count A function to do that. What would you like to count? I want to count the variable C, and then I type a comma. My next variable will be extracting the left column of the unpivoted data, that's called G. I type a comma. I recreate the function consisting of two column if and sequence that I just explained. So I type two column if sequence. I type comma F. I close the bracket for the sequence function. I type comma. This is the second argument of the if function. I want the variable B. I close the bracket for the if function. For the two column, I type a comma to ignore blanks and error. I type another comma, and I want to scan by row. Then I type 0, and I close the bracket. I type a comma and Alt Enter to move to the next line. My next variable will be called H. I type comma, and this one will be extracting the second column of the unpivoted data, which are the 12 months repeated for the number of regions. So I use another two column if and sequence. I just explained this function, two column if sequence, and I hit tab, comma, I type E, which is the number of regions. I close the bracket. I type a comma, and now the second argument of the if function, the value if true, I want the different month, so I type C. I close the bracket for the if function. I type comma, ignore blanks and errors for the two columns, another comma, and this time I would like to scan by column. Then I type 1 and I close the bracket. Another comma at the end, Alt Enter to move to the next line. The next line will be returning the amount into one single column. I'll call it I, and the variable I will be taking the result of the variable D and convert it into one single column. Then I type two column. For the variable name D, I close the bracket, comma, Alt Enter, and the last variable that will deal with cell A1 to create the column headers. I call this variable J. I type a comma, and this one uses a text split function. It will take the source data and will keep only cell A1. Then I use a take function. I open bracket. I want to use the variable A, the source data, and then I type comma 1, comma 1. I close the bracket for the take function, and then I type a comma. I'm back to the text split function. What's your delimiter? For the column delimiter, I type in double quotation a forward slash space. I close the double quotation. I close the bracket for the text split function. Another comma. And finally, what do you want to do? The variable G is the leftmost column, the variable H is the second column, the variable I is the third column of the unpivoted data. I want to put them side by side, which requires an H stack function, and to put the labels on top of them, the column headers, then I use a V stack function. I hit Alt Enter and I type V stack. I want to use the column headers, which is the variable J, and then I type a comma. I want to put the three columns side by side. Then I use an H stack function, and I type G, comma H, comma I. I close the bracket for the H stack. I close the bracket for the V stack, and I close the bracket for the let function. When I hit enter, here is the result. I was able to unpivot my list. Let's try to copy this function and use it on another source. Control C to copy. I hit escape. I collapse the formula bar, Control Shift U. I go to the next worksheet. I select cell A9 and I paste my function, Control V. When I hit enter, Here is my unpivoted list. Can I use it on a list or table of a different size? Let's do that. I go to the next worksheet. I select cell K1. I paste my function, Control V. All what I need to do is to change the range and select the correct range. Where I hit enter, I was able to unpivot my list, whatever the size of that list. Using a function requires a little bit more doing, but you can create this function one, save it as an autocorrect value, and keep reusing it. Just change the source range every time you use it with a different list. If you found value in this tutorial, give it a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to my channel to be notified when new tutorials are released. The best is yet to come. Thanks for watching and see you next time.